listening to Evil Dojo Dark Mage in the house with the sick flow. Listening to Evil Dojo Dark Mage in the house with the sick flow. Listening to Evil Dojo Dark Mage in the house with the sick flow.
Hey you, I've been looking for you everywhere. So cold, you can't even feel my stare. Why try? I can do the shit anyway. So, cash in hand, we ain't got no time to play. Oh no, no, I can't do this alone. Oh no, no, I need that evil dojo. Oh no, no, where the fuck are you, Dark Mage? Oh yes, baby, I need that evil dojo. Hey you, I've been looking for you everywhere. So cold, you can't even feel my stare. Why try? I can do the shit anyway. So, cash in hand, we ain't got no time to play. Oh no, no, I can't do this alone. Oh no, no, I need that evil dojo. Oh no, no, where the fuck are you, Dark Mage? Oh yes, baby, I need that evil dojo. Oh no, no. Oh no, no. Oh, oh.
Hey, I need my motherfucking coffee. Ain't not a person in the world who can stop me. The corporate world is the devil, I am godly. When I got my coffee, I'm the motherfucking top beat. I need my motherfucking coffee. Ain't not a person in the world who can stop me. The corporate world is the devil, I am godly. As long as I got my coffee, I am the motherfucking topic. I need my motherfucking coffee. Ain't not a person in the world who can stop me. The corporate world is the devil, I am godly. As long as I got my coffee, I am the motherfucking zombie. I need my motherfucking coffee. Ain't not a person in the world who can stop me. The corporate world is the devil, I am godly. As long as I got my coffee, I am the motherfucking zombie. I need my motherfucking coffee. Ain't not a person in the world who can stop me. The corporate world is the devil, I am godly. As long as I got my coffee, I am the motherfucking zombie. I need my motherfucking coffee. Ain't not a person in the world who can stop me. The corporate world is the devil, I am godly. As long as I got my coffee, I am the motherfucking zombie. I need my motherfucking zombie. I need my motherfucking coffee. 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 Ain't not a person in the world who can stop me. The corporate world is the devil, I am godly. As long as I got my coffee, I'm the motherfucking zombie.
Boots on the ground, I'm setting up shop. In the shadows where the action won't stop. Silent and steady, got my sights on the prey. One hit, one kill, that's my tactical play. Can't be queen in the game, can't deny. Got my sniper and I'm aiming high. Enemies rage while I bask in the glow. Hiding in the dark, I'm the star of the show. Map knowledge sharp, I'm a beast unseen. In the bunker where the kills are clean. Patience pays off, I'm here to stay. Stacking up the score while others decay. Can't be queen in the game, can't deny. Got my sniper and I'm aiming high. Enemies rage while I bask in the glow. Hiding in the dark, I'm the star of the show. They think they got me, but I'm playing smart. Laying low and silent, that's my art. Every corner's mine, I'm the camping champ. Watch your step or you'll catch my step. Camping queen in the game, can't deny. Got my sniper and I'm aiming high. Enemies rage while I bask in the glow. Hiding in the dark, I'm the star of the show. Can't be queen in the game, can't deny. Got my sniper and I'm aiming high. Enemies rage while I bask in the glow. Hiding in the dark, I'm the star of the show.
What's up, everybody? How y'all doing today? Welcome to that evil dojo. My name is the Dark Mage. There might be many people online who go by Dark Mage, but there's only one, as far as I'm concerned. Everybody want a copycat. You know, the funny story about the origin of my name, it was like the first America Online username that I ever selected, and it was based off of Dungeons and Dragons. So I used to play D&D tabletop when I was a kid in middle school. I actually got my start with D&D 2.5, and then not long after that, 3rd edition came out. So that was cool. 3rd edition's great. It's one of the bigger influences as to like why I'm doing what I'm doing and the kinds of games that I want to make. Oh shit, I fucked up here. Hold on, that ain't right. So my webcam's been glitching out on me, which is why I haven't been on cam. But let's see here. Where's my fucking mouse? There it is. I was trying to pull up chat so I could actually read it when I want to. Got this beautiful triple monitor setup going here, where the 2 main monitors are at my desk. But then I have a 3rd TV that I'm using right now to do the actual work on. So take a look at what I got. Check this out. This is a 10 by 10 by 10 of actually I think this is a 20 by 20 by 20. So this is a pretty deep cube construct setup here, right? But it's a good like demonstration of being able to like render, you know, so many objects on the screen. We started with 1 sprite, and we have now 20 times 20 is 400, and then times another 20, that's 8,000, right? My math's good there, right? So we got 8,000 cubes here. Many of them we can't see because they're all drawn beneath and everything, but we're drawing them anyway just as a proof of concept. Optimization and stuff will come much later. So, I mean, this is good and everything, right? Like, but it's still not a game yet. It's still not dudes moving around on the screen. We still don't really have a full sandbox environment. And I want to start stepping back towards that today, because Project.RPG, for what I've built so far, works really well. But this visual upgrade is going to make it absolutely pop. Not to mention, give me an opportunity to, on a per floor basis, handle a Z-axis. So that way we can actually have dungeon floors that are composed of arrangements of these like you know, these cube based terrains where, like, you know, ultimately we're going to have different biomes per tile. So each cube is effectively 1 tile. So when we're in the code, dungeon floor has a width, height, and a depth. And then we actually use a unordered map. I suppose it could be an ordered map, but you never know when you're going to need to like access things out of order. So like attempting to like jump into the middle of a map, like when it's unordered, might cause something with regards to slowdowns. I'd be doing a little bit better, if my fucking car would start. So I got an interesting problem, and I'm in the process of dealing with it, but I've got time to kill before I have to actually do any sort of manual labor. First of all, y'all can hear me good, right? Secondly, my cat's trying to drink my coffee. That's a no-no. He's literally right up ass against the microphone right now. Alright, so we gotta get this shit rolling because multiple things gotta happen. I gotta get my money up for a number of reasons, including the first one that I started with. My car won't start. And the trickle charger that I bought that actually has worked really well so far, for some reason, isn't able to boot my car anymore. So one of the problems I'm now facing, okay, good, audio's good. Also, I can tell that, there is something like a 30-second-ish delay between me saying stuff and y'all actually seeing it, which is fine. It gives me an opportunity to kind of get ahead of the game. So my car won't start, and I have a trickle charger that I've used for the last few years that has worked pretty well. Actually, a couple of years. It hasn't been that long. But so the problem originally started at my old place. In the middle of driving, I forget where I was going, but in the middle of driving, my fucking car dies on me, right? Like at a stoplight, like as I was pulling up to a stoplight, and it was on a hill, so car's dead, and I'm rolling downhill, and I'm freaking the fuck out, right? Brakes won't engage. I have to put on the manual emergency brake in order to get the car to stop moving, but so that I don't like hit the car in front of me or roll out into traffic. So this was a few years ago, before I moved in with family to help out with my grandma. And I'm pretty sure I got a new battery, right? And everything was good. And then I moved in with family, and I'm not really driving as much because previously I was driving a lot in order to get over to their house multiple times a week. And move in with them, and I stopped driving as much. So from there, I didn't have any problems up until I discovered that for some reason, one of my rear lights was like stuck in the on position, and it was draining my battery. And one day I went out to my car, and my battery's dead, right? And obviously I needed to be able to go places, so I buy this $25 Chinese-made car charging kit. You plug it into a wall outlet in your house, and then using an extension cable, you plug the extension cable into your house, and then you pull the cable out to your car, and then you can plug that in and boot it. Or better yet, you're technically supposed to take the battery out of your car first, pull it inside, and then charge it like inside somewhere. But either way, I managed to buy that thing and use it overnight, and it works really well. And it generally works pretty well. But one of the problems I'm facing now is that it's not working anymore. Even though I've actually used it since I've moved into this apartment, because one day I went to the store and I forgot to turn my headlights off when I came home, and my fucking battery was dead. So thankfully I had this charger I plugged into my wall. I had to buy an extension cable. Actually, I had to buy two of them. One so that it could actually fit outside my front door so I could close the door without like damaging the cable. They actually make cables like that, which is really fucking awesome. But the second problem was that I fucking hook it up this time, set everything up, and hours later it's still saying like it can't detect that there's even a battery at all. So I'm like, oh shit. I take a look at the product description and it says that it's like the battery has to have a minimum charge of like 0.3 volts, otherwise it won't like actually activate the automatic charging. I'm like, fuck. So I did a little more product research. I found another charger that's a few ranks higher in the Amazon product listing, and it even claims that it can like revive completely dead batteries through a manual charge. So what I'm gonna do is I've ordered parts to take out my battery. I'm gonna actually attempt to do this myself for the first time ever, which I think everyone should be able to do at least some of their own car stuff, right? It's part of my whole ethic of do it yourself. Like, if you're gonna own a product, you should be able to do maintenance on your own products that you own, and you shouldn't rely upon other people unless you absolutely have to. And a lot of people just de facto like do that, and I've always had a problem with that because I want to understand more about my world around me, especially things that I have to rely upon on a day-to-day basis. I mean, so as far as creamers go, I use milk. I used to fuck with a lot of different creamers. I grew up on some shit that like I later discovered was basically just like hydrogenized fucking palm oils and shit, which is probably one of the reasons I had such like nasty congestion as a kid. So I stopped doing that. I just went pure milk. It's been great. Half and half's also a good alternative, as is evaporated milk and what's the other one? Condensed milk. Also, heavy whipping cream too is also a very good option. I've done butter in the past, but you really need like a blender in order to like properly like distribute the butter. People be like, butter and coffee, and I'm like, nah, dude, you gotta try it. It's good. It gives it makes the coffee like a little bit heartier. I've been drinking a lot of instant coffee to like save money lately, and honestly, you can make a really fucking good cup of instant coffee. The trick is to like in the instructions they call for like 1 spoonful of instant coffee. I use like 1.5 to 2, and you get a bit of a thicker, more powerful coffee. And you know, just to cut back on that, you add a little bit of extra sugar and milk, and it's good. It's real good. Okay, so entities, right? Dungeon, right? So one thing I was musing about earlier is that the size of the blocks seems kind of big. I found this script that allows me to like immediately export 2D tiles and convert them into 3D tiles, right? I actually started working through a bunch of them. So like, let's do an example here, right? Like, because a lot of these are going to end up as actual tiles in the game. And these are converted off of existing tiles that I have from that mini fantasy asset pack. And they actually dropped a 3D version recently. I'm going to have to take a look at. Like they have so many assets. And you don't have to use all of them to make a good game. In fact, I used a few for the Game Jam game. And even then, like, my usage was super limited. It was like the orc, the sword, the hero, the heart, the coin, excuse me, the dwarf, a couple other dudes. So, like, if we zoom in on this guy, right? Here's how the script works. And apparently it's a Lua script, and knowing that I can write my own scripts, like, because there is kind of like a bit of wanting as far as like how this script operates, and I feel like I could tweak it a little bit to like be more perfect. So here's how it works. You select the region in the sprite like that you want to actually generate the things for, and here's what you do. You go to File, Scripts, and then you have to hit 3 of these, which is why I want to like automate it, right? So what you do is you hit Tile, and then you hide that layer that just got created, and then you do File, Script, Isometric Side, hide that one, and then you do File, Script, Front, and then you hide that one, right? So now I'm going to hide this bottom. I'm actually going to delete the bottom one. And now we're going to unhide Isometric Side, which is the top of it. And we're going to move it into a very specific position that I've figured out. We're going to go to the center, and then we're going to go down so that just the top pixel row is above the center. So next we're going to unhide Isometric Side. We're going to select that layer, select all, and then similarly we're going to adjust its position so that it lines up with the top of the tile. Lastly, we're going to unhide the last one, select it, select all, and then move it over and down. Now that we have that, we can actually do save, do o5.asprite, and then we can do file export as 5.png. So just to verify that that actually saved correctly, I'm going to go and open that file. And I actually haven't even exported all the other ones yet. But as you can see, it merged all the layers correctly. So now we've got a new sprite. And just to show that it's actually working correctly, over in our game, when we load render textures, or when we load textures in general, we're actually going to load the 5th one that we just created, just as a test. Alright. So that looks like the new tile I just created, so looks pretty trippy when it's all layered out like this. Okay, so we got a bunch of other ones that we would have to do also, right? So at the moment, the default dungeon is set up to be a 5x5x5. If we set it to just like a 2, what the fuck? Wait a second. Oh, did I default it over in gameplay scene? Oh, yeah. Okay. Let's do 5x5x2. AAA? What's AAA? AAA. There we go. So I'm having to wrap my brain around like a lot of architectural changes, which is why I'm like really slow getting started rebuilding this whole thing, because a lot of what I built actually worked pretty well, and I have to go through the process of like re-implementing everything, right? So one of the things I know I need to do in order to get animation working again is we're gonna have to pull over sprite groups. And actually, we already have a sprite class that we started, and we have a sprite group. So I figured out the way, custom built hash table that mapped entity ID to a sprite group. But we were working in C and realizing that the STL does everything that I really want it to. Like all the stuff that I was missing in C, the STL does. I decided, okay, let's use the STL. So sprite group is just a wrapper around an unordered map that we can map like specific indices to like individual sprites. So this way, like the human, for instance, will have his own sprite group, and in that sprite group will be all of the different animations that correspond to the different actions that player can take, right? Because this way we can query like the entity ID of the player, and then we can use that to like get its sprite group, and then we can also use that to get like which index into the sprite group we actually need to grab without actually having to like manage a state on the sprite group itself. We can just use it for pure storage. So that said, we will need to actually return a sprite pointer. So for instance, we could call this get sprite at int index. And all we would have to do is return sprites of index. And it's that easy. Very straightforward. So in the component table, we have the ability to handle basically like arbitrary data types. The only thing that we have to do to like make this work is for each new type that we come up with that like has a corresponding component, I realize I may not need this stuff. I might end up doing text a little bit differently, but at the same time, I think half the point of an entity component system is to try and do as many things in that system as possible. Let's make sure this still builds, because I don't remember if I'm using those or not. Yeah, okay, we're good. So, like, let's say we want to define a like, actually, we don't even need to make a whole type, because this is only necessary for cases where we have, like, multiple components that share the same type of data. So as an example, like, hit points is a vector as well as magic points. So if we were just declaring that we were storing something into the vector, like, of type entity ID to vector, then this wouldn't work, because, like, if we wanted to store more than just hit points, like, we've already used up the vector 2 slot. So what we do to get around this problem is we create an alias. So this alias maps hit points to vector 2, and it also maps magic points to vector 2. So that way, whenever we go to, like, actually add those components, we can refer to magic points and use vector 2. We can use hit points and refer to vector 2. And we can have as many vector 2 types as we want without limit, no cap. So what's the next step? I was going on about something. So we don't actually need to define a type for sprite groups, because we already have sprite groups. There's only going to be ever one sprite group for every entity that might have a sprite group. So it should be pretty straightforward. So later on, later tonight, I'm getting a package that contains a wrench set that will allow me to disassemble and unplug my battery from my car, so that I can pull it inside and attempt to use a newer trickle charger on it. And in the meantime, I will probably have to buy a new battery anyway, in preparation for all that shit, right? So, you know, on the off chance that the charging doesn't work, I'll have a fresh battery ready to go. But on the off chance that I am able to boot and revive the battery, I'll have a backup new battery ready just in case shit doesn't work out in the long term, which it may not. I may have bought a new trickle charger for no reason, but we'll see. I have to be patient. I'm not a very patient person. Why the fuck am I doing C++? Because the feedback loop is very nice. So as an example, I can do something like, actually, I'm gonna drop the size of the window for a moment. Okay, so actually we need to start pulling some of these up. Excuse me. Okay. Okay. Let's render the current zoom so I can figure out like what to default it to so it's like looking a little bit nicer, all zoomed in and everything. Okay, so this is 1x zoom. Four X zoom. Nice. That's pretty good. It's good default. Although it could be a little bit over, right? Like, all right, let's fucking go. Okay. So now we can reclaim x0 as x. We can do the same thing for y. And we're good. So let's add in $350. That seems pretty good. Nice. That's pretty good. It's nice and center. But when you zoom in a little bit, so one of the cool things that we can do here is since we only have one CPP file and the rest are all .h, but we can set up so that if any of them change, to rebuild the game. So just to like prove that that works. Alright, so now over here, even if I just save an empty file, it triggers a rebuild. And if we have this open while we're working on stuff, we should be able to actually catch errors as they occur in the build process. Generally speaking, so long as I am careful to like selectively save when I've successfully completed, writing something to like test it, like all I have to do rather than having to manually type in build and all that stuff or make and whatever, this thing can just run on loop. Previously, when I had the hot reloading working in C, this was kind of a fun like loop to have running. Because you can set it up so that your game never actually appears to close, and so you can load things in externally on the fly if you so chose. At the end of the day, this is not something that ends up as a shipped feature in any sort of product because potential dangers involved, right? Like, the world is starting to move away from shared libraries. iOS stopped doing this shit a long time ago. Go, by default, produces static builds. I don't even know that you can do dynamic linking in Go language. So, like, generally speaking, like, you want to do any sort of, like, resizing before you do a split. Let's see. I'm going to get rid of HXHY because those are going to be, that's actually going to be a component. I feel like these should go at the top. Yeah, that feels better. Nice. See, we've already caught an error. And it's also in our LSP too. So that was a good catch. Very nice. What's next here? Oh yeah, so because everything has access to a component table that they all share, and we just copy the reference over, or copy the pointer, we can add components to the component table from here. So entity ID is a integer, and in the game we need a starting index to like create a new entity from, right? It's generally speaking, we probably don't plan on actually adding entities until we're in the gameplay scene. So we could always just like, for testing purposes, do a entity ID of hero ID to start at 0. And then all we have to do is like actually add the entity. So what does that look like? That looks like this. Use CT. Actually, if we wanted to be explicit, since this pointing to CT, pointing to set. So in this case, like, I'm pretty sure position is something that we can set, right? So we have to pass in the kind, the entity ID, and then the actual value. So in this case, it would be set position, hero ID, and then our vector, which we can start off with 0, 0, 0. So no errors there. That's good. I see viewers going in and out. I hope y'all actually want to chat and watch and ask questions about what's going on here, because it's a long road ahead of us, and I'm going to be doing this for a while, not just today, but for every day. So when we actually go to draw everything, we're actually just starting from 0, and then like when we draw the next layer up, like in depth, we're actually drawing stuff on top of the bottom. So it might make more sense for the hero to be at like 0, 0, 1. So now, this is not going to be the way that we need to draw it in the long term. Realistically, what's going to end up happening is that, like, we draw this, right? Like, we iterate through tile by tile in this fashion, but then we're going to have to actually take a look inside the tiles to see what entity is there. But for the moment, we're going to do this position kind of encoding thing, because we're going to need like a one-to-one correspondence between like which tile actually contains the entity and the entity's actual XYZ recorded position, because the way that we're storing the tiles, we don't really have access to XYZ information. It could be very arbitrary. However, if we pass in an XYZ, we can calculate which tile we need to grab. So vector to position equals CT pointing to get store, or actually get. Get position of hero ID. So hero ID, we need to actually declare it This is a very similar pattern to what I did in Project.RPG, because see, no viable conversion from position. Oh, it's a vector 3. Whoops. Okay. Okay, so that builds. We have our position, and if position dot x exactly equal to I, and position dot y exactly equal to j, and position dot z exactly equal to k. If that's true, auto t2 equals tx find excuse me, hero ID. Wait, no, it's not what we need. TX find texture ID human idle. If T2 not equal to TX end, what do we do? Hero texture is equal to the second value in that. So now that we have the hero texture, and we still have the source and the destination from the previous calculation, we can actually just draw the hero right away. So if I did this correctly, then we should have a hero dude being drawn. Oops. Oh shit. It like mirrored. I need a whole separate thing here. Okay, there we go. Check it out. There's our guy. Nice and centered and all that good stuff. Now, realistically, what we're actually going to end up doing is on the tile itself, all we have at the moment is a tile type. But we're going to need to like extend this. What? Oh. Component traits. So we're going to store all of our entities inside these individual vectors. I'm not sure if it's better to use a vector or a, you know what? It might actually be better to use an unordered map. Entity ID to Boolean. Because then we can just like not only iterate through the entities, but also very rapidly check to see if a particular entity exists at a certain location. So as an example of this, tile dot contains entity ID bool actually not pool, but contains add an any ID. Okay, so far so good. So So, like, we're creating the hero ID and we're adding it to the position data store, but we also would like a way to for the dungeon floor get a specific tile, right? So given if we successfully get our tile, we're gonna add hero ID. So like these two statements together actually place the hero. So that way, like, we don't have to constantly be checking the position to see if we need to draw him. We can actually just save, like, checking, like, the list of entities at that location. So let's start by commenting out that dead old stuff, right? So we draw the tile. Next, we're going to grab that tile. So at I, J, K. Now we're not going to be adding the tile again, or adding the hero again, but what we will be doing is if we successfully grab a tile, then we're going to need a way to iterate over the entities in that tile. So what we might actually have to do Okay. Now we have to correct our calls down here to just use the arrow syntax, and the code will effectively still work. Not to mention, we'll also be able to pull down entities and iterate across them from like another location. Okay, so that compiles again now. What's the next step? Besides me getting some more coffee and weed. Actually, it'll probably be time for lunch soon. Okay, so now we can actually just return the entities pointer itself. So back over here, we can actually do tile entities equals tile pointing to get entities. What's the next step? Now, for auto entity ID in, and I believe I have to dereference tile entities in order to do this, because if I don't, we get an error. So we're going to actually call this auto E. When we go to remove something, so like the only things that should be like actually in the dictionary are true values. So if we operate off that assumption, then entity ID equals E dot first. And if ID is exactly equal to hero ID, then we might want to do this stuff. Let's see if that works. Uh-oh. Seg fault. Not my fault. Oh no. got a seg fault. Not my fault. Oh no. Seg fault. Not my fault. Oh no, no. Seg fault. Not my fault. Oh no, no. Oh no. So, where's it crashing? Okay, so we're getting to the end of the dungeon floor constructor. Gameplay scene. Okay, so it's not even getting to the end of the gameplay scene constructor. So info making df setting hero position. Adding hero to tile. There we go. Okay. So the call to add is failing. Oh, whoops. There we go. We got it. It's all good. We fixed it. We're okay. No problems here. So let's go back to gameplay scene, add that stuff we commented out back in. There's our guy. There he is. There he is. Good times, good times. One thing I have to determine is like actually something super low effort I can do right now. Cursor, let's see. In the game, in the old game, I actually had a really nice looking green selector, and kind of want to do that again. So what we would do is script tile, and then what we'll be able to do now instead of drawing like a rectangle lines, we can actually just do a texture for it. And that way, like over here, you know, we'd be able to determine like which tile is currently selected by like drawing something like this on top, or by even applying like a shader. C++ made you switch degrees. That's funny as fuck. Oh man, what'd you switch degrees to? I'm just curious because that's fucking brutal. Oh man. There was a point in my programming like journey where it's part of any good computer science education that you get to the point where you learn about malloc and free and pointers in C. And I like that stuff personally. At the time, it was kind of tough, but it wasn't anything I couldn't handle. And I was also very curious because everyone told me it was the point where people usually drop out of CS to go into IT. Like, it was really the dividing line for people in general. Like, if you couldn't hack manual memory management, then you couldn't hack CS. If you didn't understand what was happening underneath the hood and be able to like make the computer do what you want in a way that doesn't crash, then this shit's not your cup of tea. Totally understandable. But at the same time, I never found it that difficult. I've never found it so impossible to figure out. And in fact, to the point where I've helped out countless students get past their troubles with pointers and memory management, because I figured out a lot of different ways to talk about it and to explain it in a way that is pretty kind of straightforward and makes sense once you kind of get the basics down. Basically, a pointer is just an address, and an address is just a number. It's just another integer. And arrays are basically presented as a pointer to some list of numbers. And one of the reasons that we have security problems and stuff, and one of the reasons that has necessitated the development of all these new languages, is to prevent people from accidentally stepping out of bounds on a list of numbers. That's basically like every security problem in a nutshell, is some program stepping slightly outside of its memory confines, unchecked as it is, and continuing to attempt to operate as normal, even though the calculation was incorrect. And in fact, this is what the basis of a lot of binary reverse engineering, fuzzing, spraying, and attempting to take over the stack and the heap in any given like program. So yeah, I get it. It can be intimidating from one perspective. C++ in particular has so many different ways of doing things. If you don't isolate yourself to a specific way of doing things, then like you can create a very nightmarish code base. Attempting to take over someone else's C++ project could be literally an impossible task. Assuming that they don't set things up in a way that's easy to pick up and deal with. So, in order to move our dude around on the screen, we're going to have associated functions that manage like what happens when we press up, down, left, right. We want to make decisions on like what the gameplay should be like, because if it's not like really engaging, nobody's gonna play it. If it doesn't have good controls, nobody's gonna play it. If it isn't fun, nobody's gonna play it. And so what is fun? Well, for me, fun is getting feedback quickly. So if we have to, like, actually, I kind of want to keep the, like, basis of gameplay turn-based, single-player controlled. But in the future, this kind of setup could easily be used to like make a Final Fantasy Tactics style game. Let's check some code in. Let's see, how long have I been going? Oh yeah, well, it's totally time for a break. I gotta get something to eat. I gotta stretch. I gotta think about the next steps here. What's the best next thing to dive into? How am I gonna handle sprite groups? So remember, a sprite group is just pointers to sprites. And we can just like create the sprite group and then add sprites. So in the construction of the scene, so when we create the sprite group, we have to add sprites to it. So this would add a new sprite that points to the human idle texture that has 16 frames across, 4 different contexts corresponding to the different directions that he could be facing in, and then the size of the frame, which honestly is going to be pretty much the same for just about every sprite that we're going to be working with. I might actually end up being able to get rid of these as parameters and just hard code them in. But now that we have a sprite group, yeah, it doesn't like this line. Okay, there we go. So now we're actually able to add the brand new sprite group with the idle sprite. And assuming this is done correctly, we should actually be able to pull this out during our render loop. And hopefully it makes some of this a little bit more conformed. So like, instead of us doing this stuff right here, we're going to do some of it, but what we're going to do first is check CT sprites for hero ID. Auto S equals CT CT get get sprites of hero ID. If S is not equal to CT, oops, wait, hold on, how does this work? It'd be very bad if we threw a runtime error in trying to grab someone's sprite. So, like, so actually S would be the, so this is actually the sprite group. This is one reason I wanted to implement this this check by, like, whenever we insert a component, that we would update this bit field as a separate component type, and that way we could actually check that to see if a component exists for a given type, and then we would actually avoid the possibility of this runtime error happening over here. I didn't write this part. This is actually part of the vibe coding. A lot of this structure was vibe coded, but it mostly works. However, in a very generic sense, like, it's very easy to say, okay, well, for a given type, return the store for that type, and then just look for the entity, and then if it exists, return it. But if it doesn't exist, we don't really have a generic way to, like, return some sort of invalid, like, thing, right? And we want to avoid try-catch if at all possible. So knowing that SG is a sprite group, see, we add the sprite at position 0. So we're going to get the sprite at position 0. Now, how do we determine like what to actually draw, right? So this sprite has attached to it the texture ID. The animate function will increment the current frame and then update the source for that frame. So we increment the current frame, and if it's over the number of frames on the so let's say we have 5 frames, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So the last frame would be 4. So if it's greater than or equal to our total number of frames, then we reset it back to 0. And then we update the X position on the source rectangle. We also want a set context. So if we update the context, current context is going to now equal context. If context is greater than or equal to 0 and context is less than num context, then we will update the current context And then similar to what we did up here, we're going to update the Y to be the current context times the source height. Those are two very important custom animation functions, and it's going to make it very easy to like step through the actual animations as they're occurring. So instead of us drawing using this like the source from up here, we can actually instead use the sprites source. Now, in order to do that, we're going to have to also provide a rectangle get src, and then rectangle get dst. In practice, we may not actually need dst, but I'm putting it here for right now. So get src, make everything, let's maintain the capitalization. Okay, so now we're using the sprites source. We haven't tried running this in a little bit, so let's actually give it a shot. Okay, there's our guy. Everything is good so far. What's next? Animation, right? So that the inner part of this loop isn't so congested, I might actually just pull these guys out. In fact, we're going to need to add the sprite groups for the tiles somehow. At the moment, oh yeah, I'm using hero ID for that, but at the moment we're actually just like raw drawing all of the textures like we used to back in the day. So animation, right? We're currently not keeping track of a current frame, are we? So every scene needs a current frame. Seems obvious, right? Every scene needs to have or rather frame count. So in gameplay scene, oh, no, it's frame count. It's frame count. Okay, so there's frame count. Let's make sure those numbers are going up because we're going to need that in the calculation of the animation step. Okay, there we go. So we've got our shit rolling here. Let's make our dude dance. Dance his little idle dance. So he should animate really fast. Yeah, just like I thought. He's like moving way too fast, right? Looks like he's cracked out. So let's slow it down. The frame count, mod 10. There he is. Sweet. All right, so some of the upcoming things implementation wise that I've done before, so they really shouldn't be that difficult, is changing like the animation based on like what action. So like for instance, when you start walking from tile to tile, we want to switch from idle to walking. We want to make sure that the movement is such that his position is locked onto a tile. So like if he moves to the tile to his bottom right, you know, we're only moving over one tile, but from a animation perspective, we want to like smoothly move the texture position as in its destination from where it currently is, so that he's now sitting on top of the next tile. And in order to do that, what we end up doing, or what I've done so far, my implementation pretty much works, is I keep track of a value called smooth move, which is effectively a rectangle or a XY position. So what we do is, like right now, his smooth move would be 0, 0, but when he decides to move to the bottom right tile, which is effectively like, if he's at 0, 0, then the tile to his bottom right, if you rotate things so that it were like top down view again, it would actually be the tile to his right. So we'd be moving over to the right one tile, but we have to adjust the way that I did smooth move to account for these new coordinates. It should still be the same process, and it shouldn't be that difficult. It'll take a little bit of debugging, but I can do those in effectively either order. And in fact, I might end up doing smooth move first, because we'll at least be able to see him like move around in kind of a cool fashion, like slide around. And then we're gonna have to get the animation step working like it did before, where we like reset animation states once an animation is actually completed. The way I did this was I kept track of a loop count for how many times an animation is looped, and on certain animations, on certain values, if we grab that value and it's like not good, then, or rather, like, What was I trying to say? When the animation changes, like for instance, right now we would have effectively a loop counter going up in the background for every time he's idle, and when we decide to move to the bottom right, we will switch to the walking animation. The walking animation will play while his smooth move is occurring, and then his new position, his like which tile he's actually stored in, and his position on screen like will all change. It's one thing to programmatically like make him move from one tile to another, which is very easy. You know, doing the implementation of like what's actually happening under the hood, that's the easy part. The hard part is actually making it display in a way that gives you the impression that he's actually moving. One of the things I toyed around with, and I'm still toying around with it for future game ideas, is actually doing stuff in real time. But at the end of the day, the way my brain works, the way my design process works, the way that I think about the kinds of games that I've liked in the past and the kinds of games that I want to make, all kind of revolve around this turn-based construct here. That said, I think this is a good checkpoint. We've had a good number of people show up. We had, you know, not many chats, but like some chats. I think people will be more excited to see where this is in like the next couple weeks. Because if I get off my ass, I can actually crank stuff out at a pretty quick rate. But at the moment, my mind is a little bit distracted, so it is a bit of a challenge to get things rolling at the speed that I really want to move at. And at the end of the day, I don't think I necessarily want to have like a whole ass sprite object for each tile, right? But at the same time, I would like to have animated tiles in the near future, especially like with regards to like water. So, like, we don't want to limit animations to just entities. Or we will have to consider the fact that every tile could potentially be its own entity. And if we do that, then dungeon floor, instead of it being a wrapper around a shared pointer to a map of tiles, what it'll actually be is an owner map of entity ID to tile type. Because this particular indexing is about like calculating the XYZ position in the list and then returning a bunch of like info about the tile. But this is really closer to object oriented, although it does make use of the entities under the hood. What we would effectively have to do is, like, if every entity or every tile was an entity, then then when we go to create the dungeon, like the dungeon's also going to have access to the component list. Or like when we go to actually populate the dungeon, we're gonna have to figure out some sort of correspondence between the actual tile in terms of its like XYZ position and like, you know, how we're storing things, because we could set it up so that it's actually just like a, you know, a 3D array, you know, like a cube, and then actually store just like raw tile type information that way. Or no, if we do that, we're gonna have to make everything entity ID, and then like after the dungeon's created, we would have to go in gameplay scene after the dungeon gets created. So like we create the dungeon first, right? We specify a size. So like we'd have to keep track of like some global next entity ID, because we'd have to first run through and make entities for each one of those tiles, right? So on the tile itself, all we really have is a type and a list of entities. So that's only really 2 components that we would have to implement. And it might even be best for us to do this because, like, even though we'll end up having a fuck ton of sprites for those tiles, we'll be able to have animated tiles. And I think that's going to be a really important upgrade going forward. So, because everyone's dipped out, I think now is time for me to call it quits for a moment, take a break, get back to it later. So, I want to thank everyone for joining today. Shout outs to all my supporters. I love you guys. Until next